Hi there, it's August the 8th and we're continuing our journey through Paul's first letter to the Corinthians, and we're reading the whole of chapter 4 from verses 1 to 21. Remember that Paul has been upbraiding the Corinthians because of their tendency to judge the apostles that have been coming according to how they receive them, according to their impression that they've made on the Corinthian people by their speaking. And so some of them got behind Apollos, some of them have got behind Paul, some behind Peter, and even some saying we're of Jesus. But Paul has said clearly, look, these are all servants of God for your sake, and actually Jesus is the one who is most important. So he now goes on in this a little bit, and he says, look, as apostles, as leaders of God's church, in this sense, we are under rowers is the word he uses. In Greek he uses a word hyperetes that means an oarsman on one of these large trireme vessels, one of these big ships, and that means that he has to work together in sequence with other rowers. And so he's not putting himself above or in ranking with other apostles. He's saying we're all doing the same job, and also he says we're economists, we are stewards of what God is doing. Therefore we are accountable to Jesus, we're accountable for God, to what happens in his church. And actually, I'm not going to allow anyone to judge me or to analyze me or to give me marks out of 10, as it were, for what I'm doing. I'm not even doing that to myself. I'm going to leave that to God to make the final analysis. And so he says to the Corinthians, look, you should be doing this as well. This is not some kind of strictly come preaching contest. We're not Greek orators who are going around to be marked out of 10 for our speaking skills. Paul says it's not about that. It's actually about what Jesus is calling us to do. He says at one point, the kingdom of God is not about words. It's not about clever speaking. It's actually about power. It's about what God is calling them to do. And in fact, he says being an apostle is something very costly. It's not something that's about standing up and being seen at the front. It's actually about the life that's lived. Paul has endured, remember, persecution. He's endured trouble. He's endured almost death for the sake of the good news of Jesus. And so he is telling the Corinthians, don't get above yourselves here. Don't start marking us out of 10 for our lives. Just get behind what God is doing and come down from that high place that you've put yourself on. And then he says, be like me, copy me. Yes, do what I'm doing, but do what I'm doing as far as I'm following Jesus. And in fact, I've sent Timothy to you to demonstrate the kind of life I live. See, he's saying the apostle's life or the preacher's life is not about telling people what to do, but it's actually about modeling. It's actually about exempling. He says, follow me because I'm following Jesus. Don't just listen to words, but actually watch the example of my life. It's so easy, isn't it, to get caught up in words, to get caught up in big speakers, to get caught up in clever theology. But actually what God is looking for is the fruit of lives lived out. And therefore we need to constantly be checking that we're not sitting in judgment, looking down on others, particularly when it comes to those who are serving God in this way, who are seeking to lead, who are seeking to example. So let's be generous in our love, and let's be caring, and let's make sure that we are not guilty of getting puffed up or proud like the Corinthians were. Have a very good August the 8th.